Hey everybody, Dan God of Thunder here. This video is going to look at solo laners for beginners and intermediate players. So a lot of the tier lists look at like high level play, SPL, like if you can get the most out of your character. This tier list is instead going to look at more, you're new to the solo lane, you're new to ranked, who are good characters to pick up. So this is going to look at all gods, but it's not going to include characters that are really only DPS. So this assumes that you're going to play off tank or main tank as the solo lane, and moving from there. So we're going to look at it more of how high is their floor rather than how high is their ceiling. So certain gods who maybe are really good but kind of tricky to use won't be valued quite as highly. So starting off on a good note, Achilles is one of the best characters, just in general. He's still going to be very good. I would say it's pretty hard to mess up with him. He has a very easy to hit stun. He has a couple of forms of dash. The only tricky thing about him is his combat dodge, which he needs to use for wave clear. If you're not going to be able to get that first hit on an enemy god, you may want to level up the shield bash first. Also, because it's a really quick stun, you can also negate some gods like Guan Yu or any god that has to channel their clear. Let's see. Amaterasu. She's doing better now. I don't think she's quite as easy to work with as Achilles. She does have to get up close to clear. Still pretty good. I think that she's definitely a character that if you're comfortable with her, you can also flex her into support. Solo is her main position now. I think the nerfs did not really impact her solo viability because it was always a very weak clear historically. Now that her clear is pretty good, you can get some use out of her. Definitely, I would say A+ as far as getting for new players. Aphrodite is probably... I would say B+. She does survive very well in solo, but a lack of mobility, and she does need stuff like the Totem of Ku. She does need the blue buff, which has been nerfed, and it's a little bit harder for her to get pressure. She's still playable in solo. I think it's her best position, but especially if you're going to build with a little bit less power than usual on Aphro, playable, but you're going to have to learn how to work around that. Ares, again, no mobility. That doesn't help. Mobility is very useful for new players. He does have better wave clear than you'd expect. Like, he was very viable in jungle for a while. He does do well with gods that have to dash to clear with his chains. Still kind of hard to work with, and I don't know if it's necessarily worth it to get an Ares solo. A couple of extra levels on Ares I don't really think matters that much. Ardeo has a lot of tools in the kit, but she does want a lot of mana, which in general, solo lane's going to get less health and less mana than before. I don't think she's necessarily bad, but the meta, she's really not in the meta at the moment. I don't really see anything coming in that's going to bring her back into the meta. She is a little bit tricky to use, does have a lot more actions than most. I don't necessarily think she's a brainless character. Perfectly playable, but I don't know if she's really something I would pull a new player towards. Athena, I would put Athena probably a little bit ahead of this level. I think she's perfectly playable in solo. The big thing, though, with a lot of these kinds of characters with the global ultimate is that if you're not using the global ult, she don't do much. Bacchus doesn't really bring anything special with solo. He does have some wave clear. He doesn't really... I don't think he brings enough to justify putting him in solo, though. Let's see. Baron, I think, is still probably maybe best in mid now with his buff, but he's still perfectly viable in solo, in my opinion. Building him with a tanky build, with a tanky lineup, his ultimate does work very well for crowd control and all that. And since he's going to be in the middle of the fight, or he's going to be in the front of the fight when he uses it, he doesn't want to just get evaporated, even with, I think it's like a 40% mitigation. That's not necessarily enough for him to survive in the vacuum cleaner. Bellona's a pretty niche pick. She's very easy to play. I don't think she's as good as an A+, but she does have cleave autos off the hammer. She does have the heal. I think she's pretty easy to get the value out of. I just don't, like I said, this is a new player list. Bellona is a very good option for a new player. Camazotz, that's like Cabrakan. I'm stupid. Cabrakan. He does have the clear. And if he's falling behind, he doesn't really do a whole lot. So I think putting him in solo or jungle is a good option for him, more than the support role. Another character where you can learn him. I don't necessarily know if he'd be the first thing I'd pick. Camazotz. I'm a bad Kama player, but he does have a lot of healing. He doesn't have a ton of CC, though. That's kind of his weakness. A lot of healing, a lot of tools, and he can box very well. So if you're going to play aggressive, he's very good in that regard. But that's, take it with a grain of salt on this. I think he's an A. He's probably closer to A+, S. That's just my bias coming in. Chalk. Actually, sorry, I'll get to Cerberus. Cerberus got some upgrades. I think he's probably going to be pretty good. For new players. He has more sustain in his kit than an Ares, and he has the mobility, which is why I'm putting him a bit above Ares. Beyond that, they're pretty similar. That's kind of where I would go with Cerb. Chalk, I think he's very good to get value out of. Like, he's not a good character right now. Sorry, readjusting. But he's very easy to get value out of. He has a lot of damage. He becomes an ult bot late game, but he does have mobility. He does have the heal. He is a character that you can put a lot of people on that aren't good, and they'll be able to do something. They probably won't get run over. And if they are, something's wrong. Shunga, the only kind of tricky thing with Shunga is that you don't want teleport. Teleport is kind of mandatory on solo right now. But Shunga, if you're playing her well, doesn't use it, so she can get away without it because of the bunny. So take it for what you will. She's good, but like I say, it's just one of those things where if you're new, there's going to be some learning curve to her. Kukulkan's same boat, but the different mechanic, the rage, learning how to manage and control that. Beyond that, you don't have to level up the event Steam, or Steam Vents, whatever it's called. So you can actually get ahead of that, but there's all a lot of stuff that's a little bit unintuitive to learn, so that's why I'm knocking him down a bit. I think he's actually going to be fairly playable in Season 7. Shen. What do I do with him? I don't think he's that great in solo. I think he really prefers to be in jungle or support. His ultimate really wants him to be in team fights, and you don't get that for a while in the solo. It's not a great 1v1, and if you don't have him 1v1, it's a cheap heal. His clear is pretty good with the mink, but it can be intercepted, and if it's stopped, you lose a lot of the potency. So, kind of hard to work around in solo. I don't know if he necessarily needs these extra levels either, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend him. Let's see. Fafnir, not a solo. Fenrir, trying to think. He has a lot of lifesteal. He does have the mobility that you want. Ragnarok can be a fun little trick to just pull someone under tower so they take a bunch of shots, and if they're not prepared for that, they're fucked. I would probably, I don't know. I would say A. He doesn't mind building tanky. Pridwin, still really, really good on him. So make sure you have that because it works off of the doubled runes. Geb has issues. He'll probably get steamrolled, especially with the Guardian's Blessing being nerfed. Guardian's Blessing in solo is almost useless now. And I would say Kidnet, let's say even here, they are not really new player friendly options. They will work well with a lot of levels, but if you're new, trying to get those extra levels as Geb and Ganesh without feeding and getting run over is going to be very difficult. Their wave clear isn't as good. They don't really have the tools to kind of get ahead, and there is a reason you would want to bring them into the solo, but as a new player, I'd stay away. Guan Yu, I'm going to say, is kind of in the middle of the pack. He does have the heal. He does do well with levels if you're going to put him in solo. But any character that can stun out his Talu Assault, his 3, can shut down Guan Yu. You're going to have to be very careful, and he has to be very close in order to use it. Achilles will generally, a good Achilles player will always just flatten a good Guan Yu player. So, watch out. Hades, all you have to do is you pop up and detonate, and at like level 3 you clear the wave. It's really easy. He can be a pain in the ass as well. He does mess with some builds because he will always go, because he's magical. It's just what he does. Let's see. Hell in general is somewhat difficult to play, I think, just because she has so many actions going on. But if you're a good Hell player, you can absolutely use her. Those extra levels are helpful, but there's less mana than there used to be in solo. Totem of Ku isn't as good, although she does have a decent push for that. And the blue buff will generally give less mana than before, which Hell doesn't like. Hercules. I'm going to put him in B+, and it's just because I find that the Earthbreaker Driving Strike combo is hard to land. If you're good at it and you don't suck at it like I do, he's closer to A+, S. If not, he's useless. If you can land that one combo, he's good, and if you can't, he doesn't really do a whole lot. Horus. Horus, I think, he's kind of got the same problem as Ganesh and Geb, just not quite as badly, but he also does bring a lot to the table at high levels. If he can get his Wind Gust and Fracture up, he can do a lot. But he doesn't have a lot of power. He doesn't have very good wave clear early, but he also wants to have healing. So he's kind of in this conundrum where, out of the solo lane, he wants to be good. He wants to be able to contribute to the team heal. He also wants to be able to do damage, and he has to really pick one early on. So use him at your own risk early on. That's why I'm putting him in B. Not a very high recommendation. But if you can not get run over, again, he is good. It's just as a new player, I think that's going to be difficult. Let's see. Jormungandr, yeah, I think he's probably up there. He has a very long poke. He has pretty much a get out of jail free card with his ultimate. He's untargetable for 12 seconds. If he is in the middle of the lane, he can move basically to his tier 2. If he really has to, he can get away from anything in that ultimate. He's very safe. He does lack sustain, and that's about it. But other than that, he has a lot of pressure. He has a get out of jail free card. As long as it's up, good luck ganking him. Definitely a character I'd recommend for new players. Just watch out. If they have a CC like a Herc or an Achilles, they can get a lot of free damage on him. Let's see. Hugbug. Why would you ever play him in solo? Because he does his ultimate. King Arthur. I'm torn. Between A and A+. I want to go A+ just because once you learn a little bit of him, you can unlock so much. He plays differently than most other characters, but once you understand how he works, because he's always on quickfire, he's always on instant cast, and he always has so many abilities. You need Glad Shield. But once you have that, he's fucking ridiculous. So, A+. Kumbhakarna. Better wave clear than most. A lot of CC, and if he's able to, if he's able to be in the middle of that team fight with all of his CC, with a couple of extra levels, he's a fucking pain. Not quite as brainless, not quite as easy to learn as some of these other characters. Actually, I'll probably put him in A. Very worth it though. Kusumbow. He's not in a great spot right now, which lowers him a little bit. I think he's still A. I think he might really be best in solo lane, so he has those extra couple of levels to reflect damage off with. And if you're able to push the enemy through their own minions, they can take a lot of damage at level 2, and they're not expecting it. Kusumbow solo has a lot of little nasty tricks that you can play. So once you learn some of the combos that aren't very difficult. So I think he's definitely worth it for a new solo lane player. Let's see. No, Loki doesn't play tank. And again, this is a tank assumption. Let's see. Nejah just doesn't bring what he used to. You can play him with tank, but he doesn't really do anything with the extra levels if you're playing him tanky. And if you're playing in like a hybrid style, still really good jungle. I think he still has a decent support game to him. He just doesn't really have enough in solo, in my opinion, to really justify putting him there. Nemesis is another character. Not really sure. Like, I don't really think she brings anything to solo. I know she was being played in SPL for a little bit in solo lane. I think she's kind of not worth it. Not really seeing a point to that. Nike, fairly easy to get value out of. Just the situations where you would do so are kind of limited. She doesn't have sustain in her kit, so that's kind of her weakness. But if you're going up against hunters, if you have a double hunter enemy comp, barrier formation is pretty good. Her ultimate does make her basically unfucking killable. So not a lot to learn. It's just a matter of, will you find good situations for Nike to play? New Odin, definitely someone that I think is very easy to pick up on. Bird Bomb is great. Gungnir's Might now is stupid good. Not a lot to learn on him still. I think he's still a pretty basic character, but worth playing, worth picking up. I don't necessarily think he's easier than some of these other characters. There's not a lot to teach, and you can get value out of them immediately. But there you go. Let's see. Osiris. I think Osiris is actually a lot harder to pick up on than most people think, because all of his stuff chains. The slows all chain. You're going to want to hit with the sickle, flail. You know, all of his combos where he can slow the shit out of somebody are very micromanaging, very micro-intensive. I think there's a lot more going on with Osiris's kit. Managing his spirit form for the mitigations, learning when to stay in spirit form. There's a lot going on, and I think if you're a bad Osiris, you don't do anything. You need to learn how to do that in order to get any value out of Osiris. He's very popular at high levels of play because these players are able to extract that kind of value out of him. But if you're new, Osiris is going to be difficult. I think he's difficult but worth it, but difficult. Let's see. Ratatoskr, I might be the only person who thinks this, but he does have a lot of utility in solo lane. He has one soft CC in his dash. He has that dash. He has a knock-up. He has a stun. He has a semi-global rotation, so I can put pressure. So you can put pressure on solo lane, out of solo lane into the mid very easily. He has Prot Shred. You know, once you build him tanky, he's a fucking rat that won't goddamn die. The squirrel does work well. Tanky still, I don't think is necessarily the best solo laner, but he has a lot to bring to the table. Let's see. Robin. Robin's still pretty good in solo. He has the immunity, which is nice. He does have the 10-hand Shadow Fist, which does heal him. He has his ultimate, which in solo, at the start, is really just a get out of jail free button, along with his 2. So I think he's a very safe solo, and he can box fairly well. I think he's a pretty good character, especially as an assassin, to learn to play. I think he's still viable in solo. I know they tried to shift him more towards jungle. He's a fine jungle, but he is still perfectly playable out of the solo lane. Let's see. Set's just difficult in general. I'm going to lump him in with Osiris as difficult to play, but worth it. Sobek. Actually, I think Sobek is actually in a pretty nice spot right now. His ultimate does do a lot of damage, but early game, you could just use it to restore mana. He does have sustain in his kit. He does have the dash. The dash can also pluck to throw people under tower if they're careless. He has good pressure. I think he's actually absolutely worth playing. Don't get Guardian's Blessing on him. Pick up Warrior's Blessing. Sobek's really hard to fuck up. And the extra levels, because his dash, which is his initiate, puts him in the middle of the team fight, he likes those extra levels. Try Sobek. Sun Wukong, I think, is another character who's pretty brainless. I think the extra buff, giving him attack speed slow, makes him pretty nice right now. Bird form and bull form are both really good ways to get out. Tiger form, he has a stun. Somersault Cloud basically gives him essentially 2 life bars. Don't look at the buff to his damage on that. It's useless. He has decent wave clear. So there's a lot going on, and I think Sun Wukong is a very good character for a new player. I would definitely... I'm not saying that he's an S-rated player. I'm not saying he's an S-rated character. I'm just saying that early on, he is a good player to learn, just so you don't get fucking destroyed in solo. Sylvanas, you can play Sylvanas. I think Sylvanas is another character who is going to get run over in most cases in solo. He doesn't mind the extra levels, especially when he blink ults, but he also probably wants another relic on top of blink, and teleport doesn't really help with that. So he's gonna get kneecapped a little bit. No mobility, not a great solo lane to play. You can play him, but not really something for beginners. Terra isn't kind of a little bit in that same boat, but she does have some more tools. The dash helps. The sustain helps also. The ultimate does give her a little bit more to do in solo than a Sylvanas. So I think she's a little bit better. Still kind of in that wouldn't really recommend range. Thanatos. Thanatos is actually someone who I think is kind of niche. If you're looking to play him for fun and you're already you play Thanatos Arena a lot, he's perfectly playable in solo. The execute gives him a lot of value when he's building tank. He does have a lot of healing in his kit with the scythe toss. Just remember, you still need that scythe toss to land in order to do anything of use. And if you're able to bully someone out, you can just steamroll someone as a Thanatos. Morrigan. You're not playing Morrigan tank. So she's going to have habits with trouble being run over early game. Is a solo lane playable character, but you also then need to learn every other character you're playing the fight with. Again, this is a beginner's list. I think if she was just in a normal list, she's more useful than D. She's really good. But because you have to learn so much and have to do so much to get value out of her, stay away. Thor's kind of in this... I'm going to lump him in with all these other assassins. Semi-global ult. He does do okay with tank. He does do okay with an off-tank bruisery role. Not the greatest, but if you're a Thor player, you'll be able to get some value out of him. Just remember, you have no natural sustain, and the Season 7 changes have lowered your overall sustain off of potions. Let's see. Where did I put Herc? B+? Okay. Tyr is the same boat as Hercules. You need to land the Fearless combo. Blink Fearless is really his bread and butter. And if you can't Blink Fearless, you're not going to do a lot with Tyr. But Power Cleave on guard stance heals stupid amount of health. He's very safe for the most part. But it's just like learning the stance switch and learning that you have to get the Blink Fearless off is really that key. So that's why he's a little bit below. I wouldn't necessarily say he's new player friendly, but if you can get that or you've already gotten it moving into Conquest, okay, we'll take it. Vemana's pretty solid overall for new players. He does have a lot of ranged poke. He does have a lot of ranged clear. Clear the path, I think is what it's called. Gives him a lot of mobility. He does have the Colossus form, Colossal Fury, that's his ult, which makes him basically unkillable without a lot of dedicated anti-heal, and you're not going to see the dedicated anti-heal in laning phase. Good character to learn, I think, if you're going to be new to the game. But I think he falls a little bit short of this top rank, just because of really no sustaining kit. Xingqiu, actually another pretty good character. He likes the extra levels coming out of solo. He has built-in sustain off his passive. There's a lot of tricks you can play. He's actually pretty good at bullying. I think he's in one of the higher tiers for a solo lane guardian. So if you're looking for a little bit of extra magical damage on the team, Xingqiu's actually really good. But his value is along the same lines of, other characters like a Cerberus or an Ares, but I think he's just a little easier to tap into that extra utility, where he has this massive team fight ultimate that can help set up, and the extra levels help him set it up. Let's see. Yamoja's actually, I think, really good. It's just that levels 2 through 5, she has issues with getting run over. She's not going to have a lot of mana. Level 1, she'll be fine. Because she has 4 casts of her fucking abilities. But alone on an island, she does struggle a little bit. She's not able to heal quite as much in solo as she is, say, in support. So that's what you're going to have to look out for. Good character. It's just a lot to learn, and she doesn't play like all the others, so there's a lot to learn there on top of it. Ymir, he has the freeze, he has decent wave clear actually, especially with Frostbite, really strong ultimate, wall placement's kind of the thing, he just has no mobility, he has no sustain, so it's hard to really recommend him for new players, but he does have some value coming out of solo. Just don't know if that's where I would really want it to stay. Xingqiu is actually also pretty solid. I think he's actually a pretty solid solo laner still. He does like building that off-tank position. He does have the slows out. He has a very easy slow. He does have a stun. The ultimate, can be a really useful team fighting tool. He has sustain. The only problem is he doesn't have any mobility. But if you can get around that, I think he's worth learning just because he has so much sustain. Not sure if he's really in that top flight of characters. Let's see. Did I not? I didn't include Fafnir. I didn't include Kept Free. Both of them, I think, are pretty poor choices. I think I brushed over that. Fafnir's Coerce really needs him to be with other people. You're not going to get that in solo very often. He doesn't have a lot of pressure. He does like levels, especially in dragon form. It's just he's really not meant to be a solo laner. He does have a little sustain, but it's not enough. And Kefri, no sustain. His ultimate needs teammates around him. Doesn't have enough mobility to really justify putting him in solo. I don't think he has a place. And again, you're also just going to get run over because he has so little wave clear as a solo. So there you go. These would be the 5 that I would point towards a new player learning. But anyone up here, I think, is a very fine choice. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What kind of videos do you want to see? Like I said, I'm a solo lane player by trade. So anything else on other videos, I'm not quite as good at. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you like this video, thumbs up, subscribe, which is going to be like here-ish over on the other side. There's other videos popping up at some point. They may have already happened. I don't know. Anyway, take care. Thank you for watching. Y'all have a good one.